Hi, and welcome to episode 91 of the Heartland Knits podcast. My name is Vicki, but you can find me as Heartland Knits on Ravelry and Instagram, and today is Sunday, January 18th, 2015. We are having a bit of a January thaw here. Temperatures are like around 38, 39 degrees Fahrenheit, so what is that? Like 3 or 4 degrees Celsius. I need to finish up recording and then I can go for a walk because it's finally warm enough to kind of go out and be in it. I know it's all relative. That feels really warm to me. That might be really cold for you. But it's like the skin on your face doesn't hurt when you go outside. So I just have a few things to show you knitting wise. I'll start out with what's on my needles. So this week I worked a bit more on the sweater that I showed you I'd started. This is the Entangled Vines cardigan by Alana Dakos. It's included in her first Botanical Knits book. And so this is as far as I am on that. I can show you it's easier to see it on the back. The yarn I'm using is Sun Valley Fibers. It's her Merino Cashmere Nylon, her MCN worsted, and the color is called Soul Searching Blue. And so you can see it's a really pretty blue. This was yarn that I ripped out of a sweater I knit last year because I loved the yarn, but I didn't love it in that sweater. So I'm thinking that I will like it much better with this. This pattern is just a kind of a basic, top-down raglan, and then on the sleeve it has this really pretty cable kind of detail with leaves. So I have been alternating skeins because I choose to do that with any sort of multi-skeined project that uses a hand-dyed yarn. And you can see it's, kind of overall, it's not a solid blue, but it's not stripy kind of funny. I love the way Jeanette dyes her yarn. I think she does a fabulous job. Because this was yarn pulled out of another sweater, and that sweater was done in pieces, so, and I alternated that one too, so the little balls of yarn that I have are smaller than usual. I would ordinarily, try to join a new yarn like on the edge, but occasionally, and I will have to do this on the sleeve anyway probably, I thought I would show you just quickly how I decided to deal with joining in a new yarn. This is a 4-ply yarn. And so I could do a Russian join. I can't do a spit splice because it's a superwash yarn, but I could do a Russian join. But when I came I came across and I was going to do this kind of in the middle of the back, I was sitting and I wasn't near anywhere where like needles were, and I was just too lazy to get up. So I thought I could do this. So instead of, you could do just a really quick and easy join, just knit one stitch with both the old yarn and the new yarn. And then that stitch will just be one that will be doubled, and then you have to weave the ends in. But instead of doing that, because if that one stitch is doubled, it could kind of stick out funny, what I chose to do was I split the yarn into, it's a 4-ply yarn, I split it into 2 plies. So there are like, two of each, ply. And then I did that with the new yarn that I was going to join in too. So I had essentially like 4 little pieces of yarn. So then I took the old yarn and took the half of that yarn, the 2 plies of that yarn, and knit the next stitch along with half the plies from the new yarn. So this is my old one, and this is one from my old one, and this is one from the new one, and this is one from the new one. And so I can just weave. I know it's more ends to weave in, but that stitch, so these two strands, one from the old and one from the new, were knit that one stitch, and that's what's joining, using that to join. And then these were the extra plies from each, the old and the new. So then I will just weave those in along the back. And so along the front, you can't really see. There is not like one stitch that is thicker than the other ones. So that's just how I decided to deal with it for this sweater. But I am enjoying knitting it. I love this yarn. So that was kind of one project that I worked on. And then I picked up two projects that had been started last summer and just picked them up. The first one, I don't remember if I showed you kind of the finished. At the beginning of the summer, I kind of started the yokes of two boho sweaters. One was Green Apple, which I finished last fall, and the other was the Egg. I know I took this one along to ZK when I really wasn't knitting at all. I think I knit maybe a half a round on the whole thing, the entire time I was there. But I also took it to knitting camp, and I finished up the yoke, and then I started doing the short rows. So I picked this one back up again because I would like it to have it, done maybe by spring. And so I thought, well, I'll show you this because I can't remember if I showed you the whole finished yoke. But this is the Egg, and this is a kit from Sweden. This was dyed by Soul Silk, but there's a new dyer, a new woman who is following Solveig Gustafsson, her formulas that she figured out to replicate the original boho's colors. And so I was actually a little farther on it. I could show you my little skeiny yarn just dropped, so let me get it. So I had actually all of this knit that I had knit at camp. I was doing, because after you finish the yoke, you do short rows to kind of lengthen the back. And I had them all done. But when I looked at them, when I took it out and I looked at them, I realized that the gauge was different. And I also realized this from my Wild Apple sweater, because last summer when I wasn't really knitting, I really wasn't sort of into knitting, my gauge was different. When I did knit on things, my gauge was different because my gauge on the Wild Apple, that sweater ended up different than all my other boho sweaters. I used the same needles and the yarn is the same. It ended up different, and I think it was because I was doing it in the summer when I just really was not sort of into knitting. I noticed it on the when I picked it up and I was going to do a couple rounds. I noticed it right away that my gauge on these short rows that I had done at camp were different. So I went back and I pulled those out. So I'm back about an inch. Oh boy, it's really bright. It's I'm about an inch past the yoke there, and I'm going to redo the short rows. So it seemed like something to get going on again. It's a lot of stockinette, because it's just plain all the way down. And I thought, well, maybe this would be something I could take along, because next weekend is the January Thaw Retreat down in Madison. And I wasn't really looking for something super duper easy, but this kind of really fills the bill. I thought, well, maybe I'll take this along and work on it there. So that came out to play. So you'll see that. I'm not going to show it to you every week because this is lace weight yarn. It's knit on size 1 needles. So it, to show kind of considerable progress, it takes a little bit. So I'm not going to show you every week if I just knit, 5 or 6 rounds or something. So there is that. I do have something off the needles that you have never seen, and this one turned out really nice. So I know I talked last week about wanting to do another chemo hat for Halos of Hope. There's going to be a collection for them next week at the thaw, and Jeanette of Sun Valley really just kindly and generously donated yarn. So if you went to her booth last year at the Wisconsin Sheep and Wool Festival, she gave you some yarn to use, which is like so nice, which is why I wanted to make sure I got one done. So I first thought, well, maybe I'll just start this, excuse me, and then I decided, oh no, I'm gonna do the whole thing. So I knit this hat. I don't know if you're going to be able to see it. This is the Oak Trail hat. It is another Alana Dakos pattern from Botanical Knits, and I think this is going to be my go-to chemo hat pattern because I think it's adorable. It's really, really wet. I finished it yesterday and blocked it last night. So I don't know if you can see this really pretty oak leaf here. And it's just a really cute style, kind of cloche-ish, but it has a cute shape, this little dip in there. So you could wear that in the middle. You could wear this on the side. It's a fun hat to knit because you do kind of the brim, and then you pick up stitches and you knit up. And after you get past kind of the oak leaf, you have maybe an inch of just plain stockinette to do before you start the decreases. And I really like the decreases on this hat, especially for a chemo hat, because you can't really tell. Well, there you can, because it gives it a little height, which is something when you're going through chemo. First off, when you're going through chemo and you don't have any hair, it doesn't mean that you have lost your sense of style, so that you want to wear just the plainest, little hat that you can find. I just think this would be really fun to knit, because you could wear it with this little the kind of V in the very front. When I was going through chemo and I had no hair, one thing I got was it's called bangs on a headband, and it's just like a regular headband, and then they have kind of bangs that you can put on, so that when you don't have, even if you're just wearing a hat, if you don't have any hair, just having that little bit that looks like hair, people kind of don't know, especially in the wintertime, people kind of don't even notice. And also because when you lose your hair, eventually you lose your eyebrows, so if you have bangs, you can kind of cover that place. Because that's when I was going through chemo, when I, had no eyebrows or eyelashes or anything, that's what kind of makes you look sick. So the bangs kind of cover that if you're wearing a hat. So you could do that, or you can wear it on the side. And it also just gives a little bit of height, so that maybe you got hair. Maybe it's you don't know. So anyway, this was a really pretty, this yarn is her worsted, it's a single ply worsted, and the tag isn't around anymore because I wound it a long time ago, but it's this really pretty green, which I thought was really appropriate for this hat. So it's a fun hat to knit. I do highly recommend it, and I love that book, the Botanical Knits book, because there's sweaters, there's accessories, and they're all like excellent. You know, they're written, you know, really well. And so in Imaginating, I am still thinking about a project that I kind of thought about in last fall, and that is the K-Facet. It was the mystery along, but now it's not a mystery. But it still kind of makes me want to do it. I'm not one for doing kind of big, kind of blanket kind of projects. I think I've knit two afghans. One was the Aran one, and one was the puzzle pillow blanket. And I love both of them, but there was just something about this one that was intriguing. When it intrigued me, especially the pastel colorway of the K-Facet one. And then I saw like the first kind of clues, and they were all going to be these little stripy things, and I was like, oh, I don't think I want to do that, all those little stripy squares. But now there are people kind of showing their finished ones. They're really pretty, and so I'm thinking about it again. I don't know. I'm not going on, but in case you haven't seen like one of the finished ones, so this is the pastel version in a finished one, which is the colorway that I like. I mean, I think the other colorways are really pretty. I really love the turquoise one with the blues and stuff. I think that's really pretty. Here's a really pretty in the blue one. I think that looks really, really pretty. So anyway, I am thinking about it. That's probably as far as it's going to go for a while. If you have thought about it, let me know. Maybe just like what we need is like a little support group. I don't think I want to do like a knit along for it or anything like that, just because I don't know. I haven't been thinking of like doing knit alongs, but maybe if I knew other people doing it, it would be a little more, you know, just do sort of one colorway, like one like kind of clue. Each of the different blocks were a different clue. So anyway, just thinking about it. So anyway, that is it's a really, really quick show. That's kind of all that I have. I don't really have any like kind of show and tell, but hopefully next week there will be maybe some yarny goodness to show you. I don't plan on like going crazy, but you never know what might happen. I'm going to keep a lookout. I'm still thinking about those mittens. Somebody on my Instagram knit those stranded mittens. It really made me want to order the yarn for those. But I kind of was holding off to see what I can find next weekend. So that is about all that I have for you. The podcast is still on iTunes, and it's also up on YouTube. I think it's important for it to stay on iTunes, just because I know there are people out there that like to download instead of stream something. So it will stay up on iTunes, but you can also follow it on YouTube. And we have a Ravelry group, which is called Friends of Heartland Knits. So come on over and join us there. And until I see you next week, from my heart to yours, happy knitting.